I was you. I was exactly you. Like
Yeah.
when some 20-year-old guy who's down in the dumps and he's addicted to weed, he's addicted to porn, he's depressed, he's on antidepressants, he's on all these different things, and he looks at me, he's like, well, you don't understand. It's like, dude, I understand way more than you know.
Hmm.
And so don't think for a second that just because I'm on here telling people, to get off their ass, telling people to fix themselves up, telling people to dream bigger and have the audacity to feel like you can change the world and all these different things. Don't think that comes from a place of like finger wagging at you.
Yeah.
It's not. It's I know what you're experiencing. I've overcome it and I want to take you with me.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Well, all right. Well, Matt, thanks for jumping on the Henosis podcast. What's going on, man?
What's going on? Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I believe I found you on Instagram first. I just typed in, self development in the search bar, and there you were.
There I was.
How's that feel to just be on top of that SEO right there?
It's unexpected on Instagram. Most of the people that find me are from TikTok, so
Hmm.
I always find it a little interesting when people tell me that they found me first on Instagram.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Instagram is pretty challenging to pop up on like explore pages or even just in the search bar, and so. But yeah, I'm glad I found you. I find your content like super inspiring, and I believe it's helping a lot of people, a lot of value in what you do. Um, but why don't you just tell us about what you do, maybe just your whole story? I know you're doing a lot of content creation. I know you got yourself a Discord going that I'm a part of as well. And I want to say this about that Discord channel. Hats off to you, bro. That, I think the biggest goal you can accomplish as a content creator is creating a community of just like-minded people that come together, that are sharpening each other, making each other better, and just sharing different things that we find in our own journey. So I just want to say thank you for starting that. And I had never been a part of a Discord. Is it called channel?
Server, technically, I
Server.
guess.
Okay. I've never been a part of one, but thank you for starting that, bro. And, I look forward to, what's going to come out of that.
Absolutely. So there's actually a lot of uh, strategy as to why I chose Discord, because I know I wanted a community of people like me, simply due to the fact that over the last few years, when I started my personal development journey, people tend to not understand it really. They tend to view it as selfish. They tend to view it as like me thinking I'm better than people. Just because, I want to live a healthy life. I want to work hard. I have humongous goals, and a lot of people can't relate to that. So it does get kind of isolating at times. And so I know that there are thousands of other people out there because I've been in this sort of space for a long time, at least as a consumer of the content. And so that was kind of the first thing that I thought of, is like, okay, well, how can we sort of create that solution both for myself and for other people? And I know that my demographic is young men, because that's primarily the demographic that, one, I am, and two, I think needs the most help right now. And so I chose Discord because young men are really kind of the only ones that know how to use it, like on a large scale.
Mm-hmm.
And they use it a lot for gaming. They use it a lot for all kinds of different stuff. And so that's why I chose Discord. If I wanted 40-year-old men in it, I would have chose a Facebook group.
Right.
Right. So yeah, that's both why I started it and why I chose Discord.
I like how you mentioned whenever you start your self development journey, it always comes off in a way where people that you know who aren't necessarily on that journey kind of view it as selfish, and like you said, people might start to think that you're better than them. Is that a challenge that you faced, and how have you navigated that?
It's definitely a challenge that I've faced because just on a day-to-day basis, you don't eat the same things as other people. You don't go out the same places as other people. You don't, do the same things as other people. I don't sit and watch TV. I don't do any of those things. And so I find myself a lot of the time. We were having a call in the Discord, and this guy was talking about how he's alone in his basement with a book. And I'm like, that's literally it. Like, you're in there reading books, you're working out, you're doing all these things, oftentimes by yourself because there's nobody else. And I'm fortunate enough to have a fiance who is on her own personal development journey. And so we're kind of in it together. But at the same time, there aren't many people like us. So it's fortunate that we're fortunate that we have each other because at least we have somebody who gets it. Mm-hmm. But on the flip side, we both feel that level of isolation where it's like there's no couples around us that are like, going on this journey or feel the same way about the world that we do. And so it does get tough sometimes, but you find people eventually, because if you're doing all the right things, if you're going to the gym, if you're networking, if you're actually checking the boxes that it takes to become the best version of yourself, you're going to find the right people eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. That's one of the struggles that I've actually, because you kind of hear too, like, I don't know if you're spiritual at all, but a lot of the times in spiritual communities and schools of thought, they kind of say, the environment that you find yourself in is what you're attracting. And so when I started my self-development journey, I was like, I am over here trying to, do the best I can to consciously eat, not be super healthy all the time, but just be conscious of what I'm eating. And then, working out, and then reading self-development books, consuming podcasts. I'm doing all these things to check the boxes to make sure I'm doing everything I can to learn, grow, and develop and evolve, and to enhance my experience here on Earth. I'm doing all those things, and I am finding, my environment's not reflecting that. And so I had to go back and question myself and like, okay, how am I coming off? And I think you're right. Eventually you find that community, like I found that Discord server of yours, and it feels good to. I mean, it's digital, of course. I think being there in physical would be a lot more beneficial, but you kind of got to take what you have at that moment. You know what I mean? And so it's definitely a challenge. I think for anyone who's listening, I think it's a normal thing. You know what I mean? To like you say, when you start that self-development journey, it's kind of normal to feel like you're the only one on that journey, but eventually you do find your tribe. And I want to ask you, why do you think that is? Why do you think so many people aren't about it? That aren't about self-developing, that aren't about growing, and that have a growth mindset. What do you think goes into that?
I think it's primarily societal conditioning. If you grew up in America, you're told at a young age that the goal in life is to, go to college, get a job, work your 9 to 5, come home. I mean, they don't even really tell you to have kids anymore, but have your kids and hang out and watch your TV shows, and it's all centered around comfort and entertainment. We reward comfort. That's such a tough word. We reward entertainment and complacency. And so that's not what the natural world rewards, though. Mm-hmm. The natural world rewards strength. It rewards discipline. It rewards courage. It rewards all the things that it's rewarded for thousands of years. And only in this microscopic period of time has that changed. And it's because we live in a society we live in a bubble. We live in a bubble where the natural world doesn't necessarily apply to us. We don't have to worry about food. We don't have to worry about survival. And our priorities change. And our priorities have shifted towards living the most comfortable life we can. But that's not what humans are designed for. It's never been what they've been designed for. And so I think that a lot of those people who live those kinds of lives are miserable. And when they see somebody around them that is trying to break outside of that, when they're trying to grow, when they're trying to be the best versions of themselves to be rewarded by the natural world, they get insecure. They want you to stay where they are. And so they try to pull you back in by making comments, by criticizing you, by questioning your every move. And that's just the way it is these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super unfortunate. Super unfortunate. How have you combated, not really combated, maybe that's not the right word, but how have you handled yourself in those situations where you have, been insulted or, just kind of those backhanded comments or whatever? How have you handled yourself in those situations?
Well, I always ask myself, who's saying this to me? Who's criticizing me? Do they like their life? Are they happy? Mm-hmm. Do they want to be somewhere where they're not? Do they like their job? Do they like their relationship? More often than not, the answer is no. Winners don't criticize other winners.
Mm-hmm. Huge. That's huge.
Winners don't punch down. Losers punch up.
Mm. That's good. I love that. It's so true because, for me, when I'm hearing criticism from somebody, and I think you have to consider, what's being, the feedback you're getting. I think there's a little bit of truth in any kind of feedback, but you can also feel when someone's just being a hater. But I think you still can feel the gist of that feedback. And I think, like you said, whenever someone's criticizing you, I like to say, you got to look at their fruit. You know what I mean? You got to look what they're producing. Are they producing a life that you want? If not, then, take what they said and not even pay any attention to it. Yep. I remember, I think I saw a TikTok the other day, and it was like, whenever someone insults you, just give them a compliment. Because it totally disempowers them.
100%.
It's kind of funny when you're on that journey and you kind of experience all this. But I think that's the price you pay, right? When you're trying to develop and grow, you could even think of it as life testing you. It's almost like leveling up in a video game. You know what I mean? You can't just breeze through it once you start this journey, but you're gonna have to toughen up by all these little challenges that life throws at you.
Exactly. And when it comes to people criticizing you, one thing I always like to say to myself is, don't take criticism from somebody that you wouldn't want advice from. Mm-hmm. So if you would not ask them for advice in any given situation, don't take criticism from them about it. It has no weight.
Mm-hmm. How has your family responded to your self-development journey?
I think it's been, for the most part, positive. Obviously, they like to see that I'm doing better. I'm making more money. I'm, in better shape. I'm definitely in a much better position in the most objective sense. But I often think that they find it inconvenient, and there's a few times I've been accused of being in a cult.
Oh, really?
Simply because I listen to podcasts and listen to certain people. They think because I listen to Jordan Peterson, because I listen to these people in the space, that I'm like they're like cult leaders. It's like, no, they're just people. Mm-hmm. They're just people. Like, would you not want to listen to the most world-renowned psychologists like Jordan Peterson? Mm-hmm. Why would you not listen to them? It's like, and these are the same people that, they don't, the only types of media they consume are Marvel movies and The Bachelor. Well said.
And yeah, I think that's also another thing you have to consider when you start this journey is that even the people closest to you will not understand
Oh yeah.
the journey, and you have to also acknowledge that it's going to be painful. At least, for me, when I speaking about my own personal development journey, it's been painful that those who are close to me, those who I love, those, very much the same people that I care about the most. This is why I'm on that self-development journey. You know what I mean? I want to be able to show my younger siblings, like, hey, like, you can do this thing called life, and you can go after the biggest goals and the biggest dreams, especially if you're in the U.S. You know what I mean? I think we have a ton of opportunity for anybody to, quote unquote, make it, or make some money and break out of the matrix, as Andrew Tate would say, right?
Oh yeah.
I wanna go back to what you said earlier about how you find a lot of younger men who are in the space of personal development and self development. Obviously, we're pretty much around the same age, but I had a conversation with another gentleman, I believe it was last week or a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about. I told him this. I said, from the time since I was in elementary school to now, a 25-year-old looks a lot different than 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I feel like,
Especially 60 years ago.
yes, and I was
The
wondering
people
why
that
that
founded
was.
this country, the founding fathers, many of them were in their early 20s.
That's wild.
Yep. Now 20-year-olds won't even look their waitress in the eye when they want ranch dressing.
That's wild. Do you find that wild?
It's insane.
Why do you think that is?
Adults don't want to be adults anymore. It's because we tell people to live a comfortable life, not a responsible life.
That's that JP right there.
Exactly.
So
Kids would bear responsibility. There was no labor laws in the 1800s. You started working when you were able to lift the thing. And so kids would bear responsibility super early. They'd have kids super early because there was no birth control to delay that process. So they had to be adults very early. And today you can delay the process as long as you want.
yeah, it's very unfortunate. There's people that are my peers. We're around the same age, and it kind of breaks my heart to hear like they don't want to have kids, and understandably so. You know what I mean? For me, like I personally want to have children, but I want to be able to do right by them by making sure all my ducks are in a row. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah.
But going back to that, you had stated that a lot of young men, a lot of adults don't want to bear the responsibility of being an adult. And I saw earlier there's a piece of content that was floating around. There's a new term called quiet quitting. Have you heard of that?
I've never heard of that.
And so I still work, kind of a normal job, and I'm a supervisor at my job, and I see it. Basically, quiet quitting is where people just stop caring about working, and because maybe for right reasons, they feel like they're not getting paid enough to take care of their their basic living expenses. Okay, and they kind of just stop pretty much caring. Like they do the bare minimum. They're not showing up on time, and they're doing all these things that is considered quiet quitting. And to me, that's really heartbreaking because I've always believed that how you do anything is how you do everything. What are your thoughts on people quiet quitting?
I mean, this goes with just anything. If you have a problem that you need to deal with, if you have a conflict that needs to happen in order for your life to get better, you need to engage in that conflict as soon as humanly possible. You don't have, time to just sit around and wait for the person to to engage in the conflict with you. It's inefficient, and you're ultimately making your life worse because not only are you delaying the problem, which then magnifies the problem, multiplies the problem, you build resentment, which induces stress, which every single day you're going to go into work, you're going to feel miserable. Your days are so limited on this earth, and the fact that somebody would make their life worse purposefully to get a point across is insanity to me.
Yeah. It is. It is. And I completely agree. And I think this leads back to what we were talking about earlier about how adults are not, primarily those of us who are in our mid-20s to late 20s, they aren't taking responsibility. And which I believe, as controversial as he is, I really appreciate what.
Don't be afraid. Just say you like him.
I do. Andrew Tate, his message, I appreciate his message. You know what I mean? I
Absolutely.
appreciate it. And he's very controversial. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So I posted the thing about my problem with Andrew Tate. Now, of course, let's be real. It was clickbait. Obviously, look, everyone got so mad at me simply because I had a problem with him, which, first of all, I do. And I know we were going to get into this, but so let's do it. I like 99% of what Andrew Tate says. Okay. And I put that in the comments of that TikTok. I pinned the comment and said, I do not dislike Andrew Tate. But the problem that I have is that, and this is basically the only problem that I have, is that pornography is one of the most addictive and destructive things in society, because if men can't control their natural impulses, then they can barely control anything. And so I think that has a real impact on our culture. And Andrew Tate is basically a pornographer, right? So, and he promotes it in society. And I have a problem with that. And the other thing is that he.
Are you saying he's a porn star?
No, he didn't. What's the word I'm looking for?
Like the lifestyle
he ran a cam girl website, right?
Okay.
With a bunch of women, and so he was sort of for lack of a better term, the pimp, right? So
gotcha.
And it was not very ethical, and especially if you listen to how that business went, it was not very ethical.
That's how he got pretty much his riches, right?
That's how he got his riches. Okay. There were other ways. He owns casinos and stuff like that, but which I also think is exploitive. I think gambling's exploitive because it's also, I think it's just feeding off people's addictions or taking advantage of people's addictions, which I think is problematic. Anyway, the other thing is that you and me, being somewhat older on the spectrum of young men, we're kind of on the older side, right? And on the younger side, Andrew Tate is reaching kids that are like 10 years old to 14 years old, and they don't know that they can't decipher between what's a marketing tactic and what he actually believes.
Yeah.
So you and I, we can look at the Bugatti and the women and all the things, and we can be like, and some of his takes. I mean, the way he's abrasive and the way he says things, you can be like, okay, he's obviously just trying to like be he's trying to be sensational. He's trying to garner attention. He's trying to be the word lost me. Provocative is the word. He's trying to be provocative. So you and I can look at that and be like, yeah, but 10-year-olds on TikTok look at that and be like, that's top G. That's the way to act.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I bet you if you sat at a dinner table with Andrew Tate, he'd be like a nice, calm, respectable guy. I truly believe that. I don't believe he'd be yelling at you, telling you how weak you are. He'd be like, hey, bro, a lot of guys are there right now. It's like there's a difference between the way people act online and the way people act in person. And I think that younger men don't have a harder time deciphering between the two. And those are my points.
Yeah, yeah. I particularly appreciate how he is almost wearing a cape for masculinity, but almost in an anti-hero type of way. You know what I mean? And in the sense that I feel like, because I spoke about this with Mossab, who I had this conversation with on another episode. I spoke about this with him, and I was saying how, he was saying how America is a matriarchy, you know.
Correct.
And which I believe is a good thing and a bad thing, because yes, we should respect and honor women, 100%. You know what I mean? I cannot imagine what it's like to be a mother of 4 kids. You know what I mean? It has to be one of the toughest jobs in the world. You know, my mom is a mom to 4 boys, myself, and then my 3 younger brothers.
Based.
Tough ass job, right?
Yep.
And so, I mean, as a man, I understand that. And but the way feminism has been portrayed, I think it's been pretty much disempowering to men, and it's caused a lot of, you know, people our age and younger to be weaker, you know, for lack of a better word, weaker, right? And then going back to what I was saying earlier, like a 25-year-old when I was 10 years old did not look like me, you know what I mean? And so I'm 26. And so I just want to know your thoughts on that, and how could we change the tide and help change the tide?
Well, the idea of feminism is that women should be granted the same rights in the United States as men, which they have more at this point. Because if you look at any divorce court, if you look at any child custody battle, it always goes to the women. Anytime there's a sexual misconduct allegation, it's always in favor of the woman, at least in the court of public opinion. Mm-hmm. And so outside of those two things, everything's pretty much equal, right? So we all know that the wage gap is a myth that's been dispelled over and over again at this point, so we don't really need to jump into that. But at this point, you can't name a right that a man has that a woman does not. Mm-hmm. It's not there. With that being said, I talk a lot about the natural world versus the modern world, right? Like the world has operated in a certain way for thousands and thousands of years. And only now, in this microscopic period of time, has it been different. You don't build a country like the United States without abiding by the laws of the natural world. And now that we have sort of, at least in an illusional, like we have produced the illusion that we have transcended the modern or the natural world. But at the end of the day, the natural world rules all. Mm-hmm. And when you take men and women out of their natural roles, which men protect, provide, you know, they fight, they do all the physical stuff. Women bear children, you know, take care of the home. That is the natural. And I'm not saying there's no exceptions to the rule. I know I have to say that every single time, but of course there are exceptions to the rule. One of the closest people in my life is a woman who, she's my aunt. She's a woman who, she doesn't have kids. She works, she's an engineer, and she makes a whole lot more money than I do. And she couldn't be happier. But I think she's the exception to the rule. And I think the rule is that women, if given the choice, would prefer to not have to work and would prefer to be in the home and would prefer to have children. But because of societal conditioning and being told over and over again as you're growing up that you should forego having children and have a career just so that you can work for 15 years and then be like, oh no, my biological wiring is telling me that I need to have children, and you're infertile. Or you're fertile and you can't find any good man because they snatched up the 25-year-olds. This is how women end up, depressed. You have the wine moms who drink their problems away, and they have 17 cats because that's their version of having kids, because they couldn't have any, because they were misled by the powers that be, so to speak. And the result of that, on the flip side for men, is that they get feminized. They get told that, or they it's just a symptom of putting women on that pedestal where they act as men in society. They serve the role of men in society. When women are serving the role of men in society, men have to do what now? They have to serve the role of women in society, at least to some degree, right? They can't all compete with each other at the same time. And so men are not wired for that. Men are wired to provide, protect for a family that cannot provide and protect for itself. That is the purpose of man. And when you take that away from them, they lose all sense of meaning. They don't know what to do. And so they spend their days on various adult websites and different virtual worlds, making the time go by, because that's all there is.
Have you ever struggled with, first of all, yes, I agree with that. Very well said. Have you ever struggled with shifting back to, younger men and the issues that are plaguing them? Have you ever struggled with, pornography and,
Yeah,
that area?
I think every guy has at one point or another.
How did you overcome that?
I watched a video by a fellow named John Doyle, and he's more of in the political space, but he's also he's a political guy, but he focuses on it from a cultural standpoint. And he made a 2-hour long dissertation on the dangers of pornography. And I sat there and watched it, and I was like, a mountain of evidence, like not even from because he's a Christian and I'm a Christian, and it's like, you could look at it from that perspective and be like, it's wrong from a theological perspective. But he did not mention religion once. It was no anecdotes, no nothing like that. It was just pure data science. It literally, the damage that it does to your brain over the course of your life is almost irreversible. It lowers your baseline testosterone. It obviously messes with your perception of the sexual dynamic between men and women. But it affects the gray matter in your brain. It shrinks your amygdala, which is the part of your brain that is the part of your brain that tells you when something's wrong or not. So basically, your body's ability to look at something and recognize it as incorrect or immoral or wrong sort of shrinks, for lack of a better term. Like you start to lose that ability, and everything kind of becomes permissible. And one of the things about men that makes them men is their ability to say no and enforce that no. Right? Like, men are the boundary setters, and they're the enforcers of those boundaries. But when you have a population of men addicted to pornography, and they're constantly shrinking and losing that ability to say no, and they're obese, and they're consuming all these sugars all day, and they don't have any muscle because they haven't worked out in their entire life, they have no ability to say no, and they have no ability to enforce it. So people that want to infringe on their life, people that want to do harm by them, whether directly or indirectly, there's no defense. There's no line of defense. And so I think we see that in our society when a certain disease that may or may not be dangerous or not comes around, and people use it as an excuse to infringe upon our lives. There's no men there to say, no, this is how things are done.
Yeah.
You're not going to do this to our families. There's none of that. It's just,
Right.
okay. And I think pornography is one of the things that has a lot to do with that, of course, along with other things.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very well said. And yeah, it is one of those things that the very first step in self-development, if it's an area that you struggle with, it's one thing that you do have to conquer. How did you conquer that?
I mean,
In
practically, I guess
your personal journey.
Yeah, I mean, you just find, it's just like anything else, right? Like if you constantly have cookies in the same spot in the cabinet, and you know that that's where they are, and it's your habit to come home every night and go grab a cookie, then you have to change that up. You know, you don't go in the kitchen when you get home, right? You don't go to the places where you do the thing that you're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
You remove the factors outside. It's almost like it almost becomes automatic, right? Right? Like you almost don't even think about it. And so you have to break that automation. You have to break that cycle so that, you know, that irregularity sort of reminds yourself that, okay, we're not doing this. And, you know, sometimes you screw up and it's fine, and you have to just pick yourself up the next day. I think a lot of people in these no FAP communities, they tend to focus like on your streak or something. It's just like, don't do it today.
Yeah. Just
don't do it today, and then get to tomorrow and just don't do it tomorrow. And then eventually I don't want to say you lose the desire, but you just get out of the habit.
Yeah.
And one of the things that John Doyle mentions in this video is that once you break, so let's say you've been not doing it for 30 days. Once you break that cycle, your brain has just as hard of a time not doing it again as you did the very first day you started. So like it completely resets. So it is important to make sure that you don't do it consecutively.
Right.
And the longer you go and you break that cycle, you are back at square one. Speaking from a neurological standpoint.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I guess to answer your question, just figure out you just have to watch yourself, right? Like, what do you do? What are the steps that take place before you're in that situation, and change those steps? Where are you? Don't go into that room, right? Or leave your phone in a different room, or, there are plenty of things you can do. And I'm sure it depends on the man and what his habits look like, but you have to break the cycle. You have to break that. It's the same thing when I was smoking weed, right? Like I would come home, I would immediately go right into the bathroom, open the drawer, take the thing out, puff, put it back in, chilling. So what did I have to do? I had to, first I tried to just move it, but that didn't work. And I had to remove it. I had to remove it from my house. I couldn't have it here. I tried to move it to a different place in the house. I tried to do all this. You have to completely remove it. You have to make it extremely hard for you. You have to make it the most inconvenient for you to do it. Right? So for me, if I wanted to smoke weed tomorrow, I would have to buy all the stuff again. I'd have to call the guy. I'd have to drive 40 minutes to do the thing. I'd have to come back here, and then I could do it. But I'm not going to do all that. Right? It's not worth it to me. So you have to do that when it comes to pornography. It's the same thing. You have to make it as inconvenient as possible. Set 45 passwords and and then close your eyes and type on the keyboard so you can't log in. And right, there are so many different ways to break those habits, but that's what you have to do.
Yeah, it's definitely, I feel like it's more challenging because it's so easily accessible. You know what I mean? You just open the browser on your phone. Yeah.
And it's around you all day long. Whether
Absolutely.
whether you're literally on Pornhub or whether you're on Instagram or whether you're on TikTok. It's all around you all the time. And it's even around you in public. The more that, the dress codes change.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I agree. Like, it's very, very challenging these days to escape that. And one thing I found that's helped me, slay that dragon, if you will, was working out. You know what I mean? Working out has been a game changer. And, I feel like a lot of people may be discouraged from working out, but if you go to the gym, everyone's there to do the same thing. You know what I mean? Everyone's there to better themselves, to get stronger, get fitter. And of course, obviously there's going to be temptation there as well. But if you're really focusing on that workout and having a good workout, you're going to have a good time. And then for some reason, like when you replace that habit of watching porn with working out, you don't even, at least for me, the urges aren't there. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I think there's a greater overarching point there where it's, if you have bad habits, don't think about just deleting the habits. Think about replacing it with something else, right? If you, one of my staples almost every single day, and it's still a vice, but it's a better vice. And I love Halo Top ice cream. Like the protein ice cream. I get that all the time, but it was a replacement, you know? And then eventually I was like, okay, I'm spending $5 a day on Halo Top, and inflation's not going it's not changing, so we better figure this out. So then it became a financial vice. And then I started doing like protein mug cakes, which is basically just scoop of protein, some almond milk in the microwave mixed with some peanut butter. You'd be surprised how good it is.
Really?
Yeah. But it's way better macros, way better price, and I'm still checking that same box. So it's just like taking what is a bad habit and, whether it's once or twice or three times, developing it into a healthier habit. You still got to fill the time, you still got to eat the food, so you might as well, just replace the things that you're currently doing with something else, instead of just being like, I need to stop eating dessert. It's like, no, just like have something a little better, and then next week have a little bit better. And then eventually people overestimate what they can do in 2 weeks and underestimate what they can do in 5 years.
Yeah.
They don't allow time to do its thing. They don't allow, they're extremely impatient. And I find myself being that way sometimes, but you have to, self-awareness is super important. Being able to observe your own thoughts and observe yourself and your actions is crucial.
Absolutely. And it's like you said, it's a patience game. Life is a patience game. It's in the self-development community where I think it's the book called, is it Compounding Interest? Or there's a book on it where it's like the compound effect. I think that's what it's called. Have you heard of that one?
It sounds familiar.
Basically, it just talks about, I haven't read it, but I heard the audiobook on YouTube, and the summaries on it. But basically, it's talking about taking one small change. Like for me, last year I started working out consistently, at least 3 days a week, sometimes more, but at least 3 days a week. And over time, it became something I just did. It didn't become something I checked off a box. It just became something I did. You know what I mean? And so it's the same thing with whatever goal you have or whatever habit you're trying to replace. Of course, you want to get to that point where it's just something that you do. And of course, you want to fast forward to the results it's going to be in 5 years. But you have to build on top of that every single day. If it's going to the gym, start going once a week. You know what I mean? Okay, I did my workout this week. Okay, go make it 2 days the next week. And then 3 days the next week. You know what I mean? And then soon enough, it becomes something that you just habitually do. And it's the same thing with anything.
You can't imagine your life not going for 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, it feels like you lose all the gains.
Exactly. And so this reminded me of a clip I saw of Terry Crews where he's like, just go to the gym. You don't have to work out. You don't have to just go there. Start with that. Just go, be there, and then go home. If that's really where you're at, start there.
Mm-hmm.
Next time,
that's half the battle.
Right, exactly. Do one set, then do two, right? And then it's just slowly building up. And that's how you create sustainable change. It is not waking up on Monday morning and being like, okay, I'm going to be perfect now.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't tell you how many Mondays I said that I was going to be perfect now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do everything perfectly. I'm going to work as hard as I can. I'm going to go to the gym. I got this whole new plan. I got this whole new diet. And then I see a cookie and I'm like, oh, well, that plan's not looking so good right now.
You're right.
And then I give up until the next Monday. Mm-hmm. Rinse and repeat. Then 150 Mondays go by and you're a completely different person. And then you realize, oh, this time thing has a huge effect on my habits and the results that they yield.
Mm-hmm. And
it goes the other way too. It's not just, you eat bad one day, you're not going to get fat. You eat bad for 365 days, you're going to get fat. It's the same with fitness.
Absolutely. It's that law of compound interest, and you just keep showing up, keep showing up, just keep showing up. And I'm curious, on your content creation journey, how much views did you get on that first video?
What? Oh, the very first video? Oh, 0, always.
See?
Maybe my mom.
Yeah. And you're lucky with that, for even your mom viewing your content. But it's just, and then you said you were on this journey for 14 years?
Yep. Started in 2008.
How hard was it just to get consistent?
I mean, I haven't been consistent until very recently. And I would attribute a lot of my success, so to speak, to that. Consistency is a huge thing. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of, and you just have to trust the process, right? Mm-hmm. I threw a lot of things to the wall over the past however many years, and nothing stuck until very recently. And had I just, in 2018 or whatever, when I kind of like stepped back from making content, had I just been like, okay, that's it, I'm going to sell my camera, I'm just going to, go do whatever. I'm going to go coach boxing, which is what I was doing at the time. And then that'll be it. I wouldn't be here. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Do you is creating content all you do right now, or do you have another job, full-time job?
I have another job currently, yeah.
And it's full-time?
Yeah, it's full-time. This content creation thing started 5 weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah, this is brand new.
Oh, wow.
It's cool. The first video I posted of me sitting here in front of this American flag with a microphone in front of me was July 22nd.
That's wild, bro, because I felt like when I found you, I was like, oh, this guy looked like he's been doing it for a while.
No, I was posting 3 times a day, so that's why I looked like that.
Yeah. And that's a huge testament in and of itself, you know what I mean?
When you've been waiting for an opportunity for 14 years and you see one, it's foot to the gas.
Yeah.
It's 3 times a day. It's nonstop. I'm setting plans up for 5 years in the future right now. Like, I'm setting myself up.
Mm-hmm. And we'll get into that in just a second. So, wow, since July 22nd, you've just been posting consistently.
Yep. And I'm not saying that's going to happen for everyone, but people forget the 14 years before that, where, and you can go back on my channel. Earliest video is 2010 because I had other channels prior, but you can see me and my little sister making some stupid video when I was 12 years ago, so I was 13. Mm-hmm. And it's got like 100 views. Mm-hmm. The evidence is there. I don't private those videos. I don't delete those videos, as embarrassing as they are, because I want people to see me at 1 million followers and look back and be like, oh, he's been doing it. Mm-hmm. He's been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And same thing with me. Like, I remember, do you remember when jerking was like the dance craze that was around?
That was a long time ago. Yeah, I vaguely remember it.
Okay, well, I was part of that that's when I technically started creating content. And kind of like yourself, I just stopped. And but I just think back, like, man, imagine if I just kept at it. You know what I mean?
Oh, I think those thoughts haunt me. Those
Right?
thoughts haunt me. Like, I couldn't tell you how many times where I kind of had something
Yeah.
and I just fumbled the bag.
Yeah.
And once this started happening, this most recent time, and I had one video that went kind of viral, and I was like, oh, there might be something here. And I was like, we're just going to attack this with everything I have, because I've been here so many times where there's a little bit of traction, but I was too immature. I wasn't experienced enough. I didn't know enough about marketing. I didn't know enough about, and that's what I do professionally. I'm a social media marketing guy. And when you mix a social media marketing guy with a little bit of traction, I'm attacking it.
Yeah.
And so I have attacked, and I will continue to attack until there are 7 figures to 8 figures under my name.
There you go. I love it. And I have to commend you for that, because it takes a lot of guts to put yourself out there. You know what I mean? And it kind of goes back to what we're saying, on this self-development journey. You're going to get challenged. You're going to get attacked. You might get canceled if you're at the level of Andrew Tate, which is pretty remarkable to achieve. But,
it's something that I think about. I was thinking about it last night, and I have moments where, I say something polarizing and I get, 1,000 comments of people saying a certain thing, and like those things don't bother me, because again, like who's actually saying this, who's going to go out of their way to comment? But it's like, you look at what happened to Andrew Tate, you look at what happened to so many other creators and so many other certain politicians in this country and on the internet, and I think about that. I'm like, because it's only been a month, and I'm about to hit 100,000 followers probably by the end of this week or next. And I'm going to be in that position. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I better be ready for it, because it's going to, because especially with the opinions I have and the positions I take, and the more podcasts I go on and the larger podcasts I go on, I'm going to be, it's definitely something that I'm like, ooh, I gotta make sure I have my talking points fleshed out, and I say because I'm not worried about being controversial. I'm not worried about upsetting people I don't care about. What worries me is that I might say something that I don't mean.
Yeah.
And I was, I looked at the notes you sent me prior, and I was like, okay, Andrew Tate, traditional gender roles, and I'm like, okay, I got to watch my words here. and I don't mind talking about those things. I like talking about those things, but it's very thin ice. It's very hot water. And if I misspeak, and I'm not worried about somebody canceling me right now. I'm a micro influencer on one app, and but that is subject to change. I'm going to grow. I'm going to be all over every platform, and there will be people down the road that want to go digging, and they will look and they will find. And so, even in this very early stage, that's what happened to Andrew Tate. It's the exact same thing that happened to Andrew Tate. It's not the things that he said recently that got him canceled. It's all the things he said 5, 6, 7 years ago when nobody was paying attention to him.
Yeah,
they went digging. They heard him saying, all these ridiculous things. Like, they're comical. They're pretty funny, for being honest. but they are much more abrasive and much more polarizing than the stuff he's saying now. And that's the stuff that's getting him in trouble.
Yeah. It's definitely thin ice, like you said. I think about that too. And, a lot of times I'm just the one asking the questions. This is going to be the content that I put out. It's where I'm having guests on. But, when I'm cutting up clips to promote on TikTok, Instagram, or whatever, I have to make sure that whatever I'm putting out is... I just got to be careful, just got to be aware of what's out there, because, even just at the micro level I'm at, I'm getting people just saying, "Oh, this is wrong," or this that, and I definitely have to be more mindful of, okay, there's going to be numerous and various different people that are consuming this content, and at the end of the day, you just gotta be careful. You know what I mean? And
yeah, exactly. It's a tough thing to balance. It's kind of a push and pull where you're trying to toe the line and not say necessarily what I truly think in the way that I truly think it, and censoring myself, right? Because like I might say something, I might make a comment about a certain belief I have about something that's going on in the world. If I'm talking to my friend behind closed doors, I'm going to be much more animated and much less like careful with how I say what I'm saying. I might, if somebody does something stupid, I might just be like, screw this person. I'm not just going to say screw, but like I'm going to just let loose because we're behind closed doors. He's my friend. I trust him. And but on a podcast, I want to make sure I'm still getting my point across. I'm still saying what I actually believe in an articulate way that can't be cut up and used and whatnot. But I also have to make sure I'm not censoring myself and, sitting on the fence, making sure that I don't make this person upset. But I also don't want these people to tell me that, I'm have some milquetoast opinion and I refuse to take a side or take a position. And it's a tough balance, but you have to think of these things ahead of time. And writing helps a lot. Like I think and Jordan Peterson talks about this, and this is where I learned it from. I make sure I write out. People ask me if I write out my videos. I don't. That's all off the cuff. But when I'm trying to form what I think about something, I make sure I write it down and sort of just like figure out the best way for me to articulate it and sort of like almost revise my thoughts. Make sure it's like, okay, this is my instinct, and then I sort of break it down and rework it till it's like, okay, I think this is what I think, and then that's what I say to other people in conversation. That's what I recite on podcasts. That's what I'll say in a TikTok, and that's kind of, I think, the best way to formulate your thoughts to make sure you're not kind of going off the deep end and also not censoring yourself.
Absolutely. It's definitely going to become an art, and you want to make sure that you're as crystal clear as possible. And and it's all a learning experience, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, you can't really make everyone happy, you know what I mean? You're going to, whatever you say is going to piss somebody off, and most of the time it's going to be a hater, you know what I mean? And it's just one of those things. I think if you're going to put yourself out there, you have to just be ready. You know what I mean? You have to just know that it's going to come with, it's going to come with it, and you have to.
Especially with the stuff that I'm talking about. Especially, I'm mostly talking about like personal development and hitting your goals and XYZ. But once I transition over to YouTube more aggressively, I plan to talk more about these cultural issues that we're talking about, because I think they're the most important problems in the world, and I always tell people you have to solve the most important problem that you're capable of solving.
Yeah.
And that's the most important problem, so I will seek to solve it. But that starts with getting yourself in good physical shape, getting yourself in good mental health, and so that's what I talk about right now. It's not what I'm always going to be talking about, but it's the first step.
Yeah. Phase 1.
Nothing happens without that.
Yeah, you need that solid foundation to build upon. I just want to make sure we're good on time.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Going back to consistency, I know it's kind of a little bit all over the place, but I know you said you do social media, and is that your full-time gig as a social media?
Yep.
Okay. How do you balance creating content for yourself and then also, still showing up to your full-time gig?
They mix a lot.
Okay, I would imagine so.
Yeah, they mix a lot, and it's a tough balance because especially with the amount of momentum that I have right now, it's distracting, and so I have to be extremely disciplined and plan literally every single minute of the day out. Because if I'm not intentional and I'm not making sure that I'm checking every single box that I need to check and every single minute matters, because when I'm trying to make, 2-3 TikToks a day and trying to manage the locker room by myself and trying to balance a full-time job, it gets dicey. I'm fortunate to be able to work from home, so I can sort of allocate that time how I want to. But that doesn't make it easy. I'm basically working two full-time jobs, and I have to work out, and I have to get 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
If I truly want to walk the walk in the way that I talk the talk, then I have to still check the fitness box. I still have to check the sleep box. I still have to check the diet box. And doing all that at once is very taxing. And so I'm not here to complain, but it's definitely, you asked, so I'm answering. And it's a lot, but I plan for it to not be as much quite soon.
Yeah, and I think people need to hear that, because I think when you put out a piece of content, like I was telling my friend this earlier, for me right now, it takes me 3 hours to do like a minute clip. You got to cut it up because you want the parts that are gonna, obviously retain whoever's watching or viewing, and then you have to overlay it with text, and then you got to add some of the images if you want to add images to it, and then all that, plus rendering time. Sometimes that doesn't even go as smoothly as you want it. It takes like 3 hours for me to do a 1 minute video. And I don't know if that's what your experience is, but it is taxing, you know what I mean? And it is like, man, I got to make sure it comes out the way I want it. The audio is good. And it's just quality content. You know what I mean?
Exactly. There have been many times where, I am reshooting things because I didn't like the way that I said this, or, I could have said this better. I didn't like my tone. I didn't, there are so many different, and it all really boils down to the details. Like when I tell people that every inflection in my voice, every pause, everything is intentional, it is. The only thing that's not intentional, and I've been getting comments about this, especially in the Discord, is people think that I have notes. That I'm looking down at notes. When I look down, I'm thinking. That's what I'm doing. So a lot of people have given me crap lately. They're like, it's kind of distracting when you look down at your notes. I'm like, what notes? I don't have any notes.
Yeah.
Don't discredit me. I do this on the fly. The problem is when I think, I look down.
Yeah.
So I just have to think and maintain eye contact with the camera. But yeah. I think I lost. No, you asked about time and how it takes 3 hours to film or to edit a 1 minute clip, which is so true. And people, especially in the industry that I work in, do not understand this, because the industry I work in, the demographic is not as young as TikTok, and so the idea of content creation is a little foreign to them. And so they don't understand how long a video takes. They don't understand, what goes into it and how long it takes just to find the right music. Just to find the right music for the tone that you're trying to portray. Hours.
Yep.
Hours of listening to things, going through libraries, finding the just right, because that can make the difference.
Absolutely.
If you have the wrong music on the right video, it's not going to hit. You have to have the right music on the right video with the right tone and the right cuts and the right everything in order for it to actually hit the way you want to hit. And that alone, it's not just, okay, I put it in the software, cut. All right, let's add some music, boom, and we're done. It is not that.
Yeah, very, very challenging. I'm curious to know, like, you're talking about how you need to be very intentional with your time, and I definitely agree with that. Do you use an app, or what are you doing to make sure you're following, your time wisely?
I use a few things. I kind of balance between like to-do lists and calendars, right? So I use Google Calendar to manage my time, sort of blocks of time, and whatever events that I have going on. But I use an app called Things 3 on my iPad and my iPhone, which manages individual tasks. And I also have a whiteboard right there. And so any notes or any tasks that might fly under the radar that I forgot to put in my whatever, I just throw it on the whiteboard because I'm always looking at it. So those are just the ways that I do it. And I don't like to I also like having the whiteboard, and I like using paper because I don't like things to be too digital. I don't know. It's just a weird thing with me. I like actually writing down my tasks. I like writing down my schedule physically. So I do kind of. It might be analysis paralysis, but I kind of do both.
I think that's definitely, because I feel the same way. Like I need to jot down stuff. I feel like there's something like biologically, that goes into that where like your subconscious kind of picks it up better rather than like typing it.
Yeah, I think there's actually a study that proves that you're more likely to remember something when you physically write it down.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then I want to ask, how do you like, because it sounds like you definitely have a full schedule. Mm-hmm. How do you incorporate, downtime and, just leisure time or just doing fun stuff?
Right now it doesn't exist. But okay. And life happens in seasons, and some seasons you are the gas pedals to the floor. In other seasons you're not really doing anything. And I spent too many years of my early 20s doing the latter. And so it's time to go to the other. The pendulum has swung. And eventually it'll come back to that resting point where we're between the two and things are balanced. But between 21 and 23, I was way over here where I was just like smoking weed and hanging out all the time. And then, I get some traction on the internet. I fix myself up, get some traction on the internet for talking about it. And now it's like, okay, this is my life's work here. So we're going to make this happen. And eventually it'll get to a point where I can, do 9 to 5 hours with it and have sort of that normal life while doing something unique. But we're not at that point right now. So right now it is 24/7, 365 until further notice. Yeah.
And I admire that. And I think, like you said, there's seasons where you just need to put your head down and work because, they say your 20s is the best time to kind of do that, where you just pedal to the metal and then kind of get yourself that solid foundation. And then, like you said, the pendulum will then swing and you'll get back to that middle where you can balance.
Yeah. And I mean, my most popular video right now says what would happen is if you dedicated 1 year of your life and gave everything your 100% absolute all. And that's the phase of life I'm in right now. It's probably going to be the next year if I'm being realistic. If maybe 2. And then, we can sort of scale things back. But in the meantime, that's the season we're in and that's what we're doing.
Cool.
I'll go on every podcast. I'll do every, I'm here for it.
There you go. And I want to talk about kind of going back to your self-development journey, so that way people can realize where you've come from. I know you said there was a period in life when you were, doing what young 20-year-olds do. But let's circle back around there. And could you just expand a little bit more on that journey, what led you to, your self-development journey?
Well, my self-development journey actually began when I was like 18 or 19 years old. But then I took a break for a while. I started right after I graduated high school. My dad lost his job, so they had to move to Indiana, and I was like, I'm not going to Indiana, so I stayed with my aunt in the Boston area. That's where I'm originally from. So I lived with her in the Boston area, and then I went to business school at a community college, and I went in there and they started teaching. They told me that I had to take like an ancient philosophy course, and I'm like, this is dumb. I'm like, why do I need to learn about, ancient, philosophy to make money? It's like, this is a waste of my time. I just spent $3,000 on books. I'm not doing this. And so I had the job of a boxing instructor at the time. I did not box growing up, but I was an athlete growing up. And then I went to this gym and started boxing, and I got decent enough at it where they were like, okay, you want to teach for us? And I was like, okay. And then after that, it was that summer, I did 1 year in community college. And then I said, all right, I need to figure out how to not go back. And so at this job, it's a fitness franchise. And so it's not like an actual boxing gym per se, like Jim's Boxing. No, it's like an actual franchise, like with multiple locations around the country. And I brought my camera to work one day. I had been playing with cameras since I was 12 years old. As we said, I started my YouTube channel when I was in 2008. And, I had started with my sister's webcam that she wasn't using Windows Movie Maker. And then eventually got a little point and shoot. I still have it. And then eventually in high school, I saved up enough money washing dishes to buy a $500 Nikon D3200, which was my first DSLR, the first big boy camera, which was not really a big boy camera when in the way that I think about it now. But that's what I brought to work one day. And I just started snapping photos of the people boxing there. And my boss at the time was like, these are great photos. We should use them on social media. And I'm like, okay. I'm 19, I'm 18, 19. I don't really care if he's paying me or not. But luckily he was ethical enough, and he was like, do you want to do this as a job? And I was like, really? And so I was like, yeah. And so I was making like $30,000 a year taking pictures of people boxing at 18 years old. I'm like, I'm not going back to college. Screw this.
Yeah.
And then, that sort of evolved. I got into social media marketing. I learned a lot more about it. Eventually, we didn't have a marketing. He had bought multiple locations. And so I sort of was the marketing manager for all three of those locations. I was able to put that on my resume. And then I decided to move to Florida. We had some friends down in Florida. I decided, early 20s at that point. I was like, we don't have any kids. We don't have any responsibilities. Me and my girlfriend at the time, she's now my fiance. We moved down to Florida with our two friends, and, we loved it. We still here to this day. But when I got down there, I learned the harsh truth that nobody cares about what you did. They only care about what you're doing right now. And so when I got there, and I was like, hey, why aren't these people hiring me? I had applied to hundreds of jobs and nobody wanted me. And probably because they saw that I graduated high school 3 years prior, and I had marketing on my resume. It's like, okay, that's a red flag. But I knew I was good, and nobody else did. And so that kind of spiraled into a depression of sorts, because I was broke. I was asking my girlfriend, who was, serving food in a deli at the time. I was asking her to, give me gas money because I can't get home. And, as a man, that's men get it, having to ask your girlfriend for money. It's like, how much less of a man can you be?
Right.
And, eventually around that lasted until 2020. I did the whole mental health carousel thing. I was depressed, I was anxious, I was the whole thing. And I went to a therapist. They saw me for 15 minutes tops, and they were like, here are these pills. So I was like, okay, I'll take the pills. And I took the pills. They sort of made me a zombie, and I think a lot of people can attest to that. and I was like, okay, I don't like these pills. Slowly weaned myself off them. And then we kind of ended up back in the position where I was like, okay, we're, feeling sad. We're feeling depressed. At this point, it was the pandemic, and it was like that peak quarantine time where nobody was going anywhere, regardless of what state you were in. I mean, I'm in Florida. It's the freest state in the country. And,
Yeah.
we weren't going anywhere. And so that was kind of my rock bottom. And I talked about in a TikTok recently about how I realized one day that I wanted to be a father. I wanted to have a home. I wanted to be a provider. I wanted to be a protector. I understood at that point. For a long time, I didn't really care about that stuff because, you're 19, you're 20, whatever. You just want to have fun and live your life. But then came a point where, my girlfriend's 4 years older than me. So at that time, I was 22, 23. She was, at that point, 26, 27. And I'm like, I know that, kids have to happen soon if we want to have it happen. And I had to look myself in the mirror and say, I'm not that person. I can't do that right now. Even if you gave me kids, even if you gave me a home, even if you gave me weapons to protect my family, I wouldn't know what to do with any of it. I'm completely incompetent in all realms of masculinity. And so that was kind of the wake-up call. I was like 5 months behind on my rent. My car was about to get repossessed. By every single metric, I was the opposite of a man. Or at least what a man should be. And from that point on, it was game on. And so I got in shape. I worked my ass off, applied to even more jobs. I did some side gigs, built up my portfolio a little bit more, ended up getting the job that I have now. And I ended up, I read a ton of books. I've went on the journey that I think a lot of men have gone on. I met a lot of people along the way that get it. I mean, they're not in my circle, like physically, but you meet people online, you start interacting with people, and I guess here I am.
Yeah. Beautiful, man. Thank you for sharing your story. I think it helps give context, you know what I mean? Because a lot of times people can hop on social media and they become quote unquote thought leaders and motivational speakers. And, sometimes it's important to tell the story, you know what I mean? To how you got to where you are. But yeah, man, thank you for that story.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of piggyback off that real quick, there, so often I hear like, oh, well, Matt, like it's not like that for everyone, or like, you don't know what it's like to be me. It's like, dude, I was you. I was you. I was exactly you. Like when some 20-year-old guy who's down in the dumps and, he's addicted to weed, he's addicted to porn, he's depressed, he's on, antidepressants, he's on, all these different things. And, he looks at me, he's like, well, you don't understand. It's like, dude, I understand way more than you know. And so don't think for a second that just because I'm on here telling people, to get off their ass, telling people to fix themselves up, telling people to dream bigger and have the audacity to feel like you can change the world and all these different things. Don't think that comes from a place of like finger wagging at you.
Yeah.
It's not. I know what you're experiencing. I've overcome it and I want to take you with me.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
That's awesome. And I think I can share that with you. You know what I mean? But I really believe like when we do this self-development journey together, it's a lot easier in some sense. It's not completely easier, but it's better than doing it on your own. And and it's important to just know that someone has been where you've been. Maybe not exactly, but the experience, the emotions, and just the despair. You know what I mean? I think when everyone who is on that self-development journey has hit rock bottom, which is
Mm-hmm.
what birthed their self-development journey. And
Exactly.
and so again, thank you for starting that Discord server, and thank you for sharing your story. We're gonna wrap up here in a second. I got like 3 questions that I end every conversation, but to kind of tie the knot on that, on your story, what would you tell somebody who is there right now, who maybe they're either down and out, they've kind of life is kind of challenging them, and they are addicted to porn. They don't, maybe they may not have the social skills that you may need to kind of navigate through life. You know what I mean? What would you tell them?
Well, I would tell them that myself and thousands of other young men have been there, and thousands and thousands of young men have gotten out of it, and most everything that you can be good at, you can be bad at and get better at, right? So like almost everything's a skill. So you talk about how they don't have the social skills. It's like, then you have to develop it.
Yeah.
And you can develop most anything. You can't develop your height. You can't develop, the sound of your voice. You can't develop certain things in your life, but you can develop way more things than you think. And you just have to go about developing that. And it's very uncomfortable. It takes a really long time. But if you're truly that desperate, if you're truly at rock bottom and you're willing to do anything, know that it's possible and be willing to try, because that's the only way out. And the other thing I would say is obviously join the locker room, because it's the place to be.
I agree.
We're reopening in 2 weeks. It's August 30th right now, and hopefully by the first or second week of September we'll be open.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, join the locker room. I'm a part of it. Matt's doing a great job of running it, and it's
gonna get so much better too. You guys don't even understand.
Yeah.
I got this plan 5 years down the road. It is not what it is now. It's not going to be what it is now.
Well, I'm honored to be a part of it, brother. And I'm looking forward to continuing to be a part of it and grow with it. And thank you for sharing your wisdom, man. And I look forward to everything that you're going to produce. And I look forward to just watching from afar. I know you're in Florida right now, right?
Yep.
Okay. What part?
Well, I don't know if I want to say publicly.
Okay.
Central Florida.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah, we can chat after.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, man, thank you for sharing that. And I think you're doing just amazing, bro. And so I really appreciate your wisdom. And let's get into the final 3, I like to call it.
Okay.
First and foremost, what is your definition of success?
Leaving the world better than you found it.
Beautiful. What's your definition of love?
Oh man. I would say to guide, or to want to see whether it's a certain person or group of people, whatever, become the best versions of themselves. I think people misrepresent the word love. I'm actually going to be talking about this soon. What does it mean to love yourself, right? Like, people think it's like, giving yourself a hug and telling you that it's going to be okay and you're fine the way you are. It's like, that's not always what love is. Sometimes love is telling you that you need to get it together.
Yeah.
Sometimes love is telling you the hard thing that you don't want to hear. And sometimes love is parting ways. And so, love can manifest in a lot of different ways. I don't think it's always that sort of emotional, like, way that, Disney movies make it out to be. And so I think at the end of the day is wanting to see a certain person flourish and taking whatever action necessary, unconditionally taking whatever action necessary to help that person flourish and be the best version of themselves.
Yeah, I agree. Beautiful definition. And then the final question is, what do you think the meaning to life is?
Well, I think it is partially my answer about success, to leave the world better than you found it. But I think the how is to solve the most important problem that you're capable of solving. I think you have to look at the world and understand that it has flaws, but as a human being with agency, you can do something about it. And you should. You have a responsibility to. If you see something wrong, you should fix it.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it.
I agree. It's definitely, I think if you have breath in your lungs, and your body works pretty good, and you have a responsibility to contribute. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I agree with that, brother. All right, Matt. Well, where can people find you?
Not Matt Graham on everything, or you can go to notmattgraham.com, find everything there.
Sweet. And then what are you working on next?
Well, the locker room reopens in about 2 weeks, and that's going to be a huge project, big undertaking. But also I'm going to be making, not the transition to YouTube, but I'm going to be attacking YouTube a lot more aggressively. My channel exists. There's videos on it. There's videos that I'm proud of on it. I think the 2 videos that I made this year are videos, that's kind of the idea of what you can expect moving forward. The 2 most recent videos on my channel. But TikToks will stay the same. Everything's going to stay the same. We're just going to expand and grow and full force ahead.
Awesome. Well, brother, the pleasure was mine. I definitely appreciate you and, the value that you were able to share in this conversation. I think a lot of people will also find it valuable. And, this is the official ending, but stay on if you don't mind.
Sure.
Any final remarks?
Just continue to do a little bit better every day. That's it. Sweet. It's not about being perfect today or perfect tomorrow. It's about just doing better tomorrow than you did today.
Beautiful. Matt Graham, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.